The night was warm, the air carrying the mingled scents of roasted spices, wood smoke, and fruit. Beneath a broad wooden pavilion, the village market pulsed with life. Lanterns hung from beams like suspended stars, their flames flickering in the faint breeze, throwing golden halos across the crowded square. Stalls lined the pavilion in neat rows, their tables stacked high with baskets of rice, bundles of herbs, and piles of ripe mangoes that gleamed like little suns under the lantern light. Clay pots rattled as merchants shifted their wares, copper bowls reflected the glow in trembling circles, and fabrics dyed in scarlet and indigo fluttered gently like banners in celebration. The sound was a living thing. Children darted between stalls, laughing, their bare feet tapping against the packed earth. Musicians strummed sitars and tapped hand drums at one corner, their melodies weaving through the cries of sellers calling prices and the laughter of families gathered to eat. Above it all, the roof beams groaned faintly with the weight of years. But no one noticed. The pavilion had stood through monsoons and storms. Surely it would stand tonight. The villagers bustled, wrapped in the rhythm of trade and festivity. Women haggled over bolts of cloth, men debated the weight of spices by lamplight, while youths carried clay pitchers of palm wine to share. The lanterns painted their faces warm and soft, so that even shadows seemed friendly. Outside the pavilion, the darkness pressed close, a vast, moonlit field dotted with the silhouettes of trees. But within the market, the night felt distant. Here was brightness, warmth, life gathered under a single roof, humming with the energy of community. For a time, the people forgot everything beyond the glow of their lanterns. They forgot the fragility of timber and tile above them, the quiet shift of age in the beams. They lived only in the joy of the night, the comfort of each other's voices. It seemed an ordinary market, an ordinary evening. Yet, in the hush between drumbeats, if one had listened closely, they might have heard it, the faint shuffle of massive feet beyond the torchlight, and the low, uneasy rumble of a giant, waiting at the edge of the dark. Beyond the lantern's glow, where the market's music faded into the hum of night, the elephant stood tethered beneath a tall tamarind tree. Its vast body was a shadow among shadows. Only the pale gleam of tusk and the restless swing of its ears catching the moonlight. Each exhale drifted like smoke in the warm air, a low rumble accompanying every breath, the quiet, ancient sound of a creature that had walked the earth long before the market's wooden beams were raised. The animal had been brought here as it often was on festival nights, both helper and guest of honor. The children adored feeding it bananas, marveling at the strength of its trunk, laughing when it sprayed a fine mist of water into the air. To the elders, it was a symbol of strength and prosperity, a reminder of nature's great power that could walk peacefully alongside their lives. Yet tonight, it was not at ease. It shifted its massive weight from foot to foot, stamping softly at the packed earth. Its ears twitched, catching sounds no human could notice. The faint tremor in the beams, the sigh of strain that lived in the pavilion's roof. Its eyes, dark pools reflecting torchlight, turned again and again toward the glow of the market. The square throbbed with voices, music, laughter. But to the elephant, another rhythm whispered below, something fragile, faltering, hidden beneath the noise. It raised its trunk, curling it through the air, tasting the currents with sensitive tip. Dust carried the scent of spices and smoke. Yes, but also something faint and troubling. The dry tang of splintered wood, the powder of loosened dust shaken from above. A low rumble stirred in its chest, resonant as thunder buried deep in the hills. The handler, lounging nearby with half-closed eyes, glanced once, shrugged, and assumed it was hunger or restlessness. To him, the elephant was always half in motion, always murmuring. He could not tell that tonight's voice was different. The elephant swayed its head slowly, ears flaring, tail flicking against its flank. Each movement grew sharper, more insistent. The marketplace roared with life, But in the great animal's mind, danger had already begun. It could feel it through the earth beneath its feet, in the weight of the night pressing from above. The villagers danced and bargained, trusting their roof. The elephant listened to the silence between their sounds, and grew restless with the truth it carried. Inside the pavilion, the market swelled louder. Drums pounded in cheerful rhythm, coins clinked, and laughter rose in bright bursts that echoed against the beams. Lanterns swung slightly in the night breeze, casting restless shadows across the crowd. To the villagers, it was a night of abundance, their senses drunk on spice and song. But beyond the warm light, the elephant grew restless. It stamped a 4 foot hard enough that dust rose in a small cloud. Its ears flared wide, beating against the heat, and its trunk coiled upward in a restless spiral, before slamming down against the earth with a muted thud. The tether rope creaked under the strain as the great body shifted from side to side. A low rumble vibrated from deep in its chest, not the lazy purring of contentment the villagers sometimes heard when it bathed in the river, but something sharper, edged with unease. The sound carried just far enough to brush the ears of a few children playing nearby. One boy glanced toward the dark shape under the tamarind tree, frowned and tugged at his mother's shawl. She hushed him gently, assuming the beast was only hungry. The elephant's eyes fixed on the pavilion roof. From outside, it saw the faintest drift of dust falling through the lantern light each time the wind nudged the beams. Humans heard only the cheerful racket of trade, but the elephant felt something else. The tremor of stressed wood, the faint vibration of joints shifting under weight long borne. The rumbles in its chest grew stronger, vibrating through its whole body, shivering into the ground. It lifted its trunk and let out a muffled bellow, not yet the full trumpet of alarm, but a warning murmur, heavy and low, as if the earth itself had spoken. A few villagers turned their heads, curiosity flickering, but the pull of trade, food, and music drowned out concern. The handler, half drowsing on a crate, cracked one eye open, waved a hand dismissively, and closed it again. But the elephant could not rest. Its ears snapped at the air, its massive body swayed, and its rumble rolled on, deepening with every heartbeat. Something was wrong. The roof above the glowing market groaned faintly, too faint for human ears, but not for the giant's. And soon, the quiet warning in its chest would no longer be enough. The night market thrummed like a living heart. Drums beat, merchants shouted, laughter spilled like wine. Children darted between stalls, their shadows flitting across the lantern-lit beams. The pavilion roof loomed above it all, heavy but trusted, as though it had always belonged to nights such as this. Then, the elephant screamed. It began with a rumble that swelled like thunder trapped in its chest, rising, swelling until it broke free in a blast of sound that split the night. The trumpet cut through music, laughter, and chatter in an instant, drowning them all. It rolled over the pavilion like a storm, rattling the lantern glass, shaking the very marrow of those who heard it. The entire market froze. Children clutched their parents' arms. Merchants halted mid-sentence, their voices dying in their throats. The musicians' hands stilled on drum and string. Silence, heavy and stunned, filled the space where moments before there had been noise and joy. The elephant thrashed against its tether, trunk lashing wildly at the air. Its ears slapped like great fans, its eyes wide and gleaming with urgency. Another trumpet followed, sharper, shriller, a cry that carried panic and command all at once. The rope groaned under the strain as the beast strained toward the pavilion, stamping the ground with force that made the earth tremble. The handler sprang up at last, startled awake, but his voice was lost beneath the blasts. He shouted, waved his arms, tried to soothe the giant, but the elephant's alarm only grew. Its body swayed in wide arcs, each movement frantic, driven by an unseen terror. Villagers stared, hearts hammering, caught between awe and fear. To some, it looked like madness. To others, like warning. The sharp tang of unease spread through the crowd faster than words. Mothers pulled their children close. Men stepped back from the center of the square. Whispers rippled. Why is it crying? What does it know? And still, the great beast trumpeted. The sound was relentless, primal, a voice that could not be ignored. It filled the night until every lantern seemed to shake with its force. Beneath the pavilion roof, dust trickled unseen from the rafters, drifting silently through the glow. The elephant had heard it first. Now it was demanding that the humans listen. The echo of the elephant's trumpet still hung in the air, trembling in every lantern flame when the villagers heard it. A low, aching groan that did not come from beast or man. It came from above. At first, it was subtle, a dry, splintering creak woven between the heavy silence that followed the alarm. People tilted their heads, confused, uncertain. Then, someone pointed upward, and all eyes lifted. Dust drifted down in pale threads from the rafters, visible in the glow of the lamps. Fine powder, soft as ash, rained onto baskets of grain and silken cloth. A merchant coughed, brushing his sleeve, his gaze snapping toward the beams. The wooden frame of the pavilion, so familiar and trusted, seemed suddenly strange. The crossbeams shivered faintly with each gust of wind, and the lanterns swayed on their cords as though shaken by invisible hands. In the far corner, a plank shifted with a sharp pop, jolting a startled cry from the crowd below. The elephant bellowed again, stamping the earth so hard that the ground itself quivered. Its massive body swung toward the market, trunk raised as if pointing to the roof. The villagers began to murmur in fear. Mothers pulled their children closer. Men dropped their baskets and backed toward the edge of the square. A loud crack ripped the silence, a beam splitting deeper within the pavilion. People gasped as a shower of dust rained down, followed by the faint thud of loosened tiles sliding along the roof. The handler, pale now, no longer tried to calm the animal. His eyes darted to the rafters, and he shouted, "Out! All of you, out!" His voice broke like glass in the tension, and suddenly the crowd stirred to life. Lanterns flickered wildly as bodies pressed toward the open air. Stalls overturned, pottery smashed underfoot, baskets spilled their contents in the rush. The hum of the market became a roar of fear, every voice rising as one in panic. And through it all, the elephant's trumpeting never ceased. It was the heartbeat of alarm, driving them, pushing them, forcing them to heed what their own senses had been too slow to trust. The first signs had revealed themselves. The roof was no longer safe. The crowd surged toward the open air, feet pounding, voices shouting, panic thick as smoke. Stalls toppled in the rush, clay pots shattering, fruit spilling across the ground to be crushed beneath hurried steps. Children cried as parents dragged them forward. Lanterns swung wildly, throwing shadows that danced like flames across the pavilion's straining beams. Then came the final crack. It was sharp, violent, like a tree splitting in a storm. The sound froze the crowd for a heartbeat, and then the roof above them caved. The center beam gave way first, snapping with a roar that echoed across the valley. Tiles cascaded down in a deadly rain, smashing onto abandoned stalls, exploding into shards that glittered in the lamplight. Heavy timbers splintered and fell, their weight crashing through tables of spices and grain. The market's vibrant colors vanished beneath a storm of dust and ruin. The pavilion collapsed inward, a thunderous roar of wood and stone, choking the air with smoke and splinters. A wall of sound and chaos swept through the night, drowning screams, silencing music. What had been a haven of light and laughter only moments before became an avalanche of ruin. But the square was not full when it fell. Driven by the elephant's relentless cries, most of the villagers had already fled into the open air. They stumbled into the dirt street, coughing, clinging to each other, faces pale with shock as they turned back to witness what they had escaped. Lantern light flickered over their eyes, revealing awe and terror alike. A few stragglers scrambled free at the last instant, diving clear as the final timbers slammed down behind them. Dust billowed outward in great choking clouds, wrapping the survivors in a haze that smelled of smoke, splinters, and crushed earth. And through the swirling chaos, one sound still cut clear: the elephant's trumpet, long and fierce, echoing into the night. No longer a call of warning. Now it was the cry of survival, of triumph over disaster. The roof was gone. The market lay in ruin. But the people lived. The dust hung thick in the air, glowing faintly where the last lanterns flickered through the ruin. The pavilion was gone, reduced to a heap of splintered beams and shattered tiles. Smoke like clouds curled upward from the wreckage, carrying the acrid scent of crushed wood and scorched oil. The noise of collapse faded slowly into an uncanny quiet, broken only by the coughs and cries of shaken survivors gathered in the street. The villagers stood in clusters, faces pale, arms wrapped around children or clutching one another as if to confirm they were still alive. Some wept openly. Others stared, hollow-eyed, at the destruction that had nearly taken them. The night's joy had vanished, replaced by the raw ache of survival. And at the edge of the square, framed by moonlight, the elephant stood. Its massive form rose like a mountain against the haze, trunk lowered now, ears fanned wide in stillness. The wild panic that had gripped it moments before had ebbed, leaving only steady breath that puffed in quiet clouds. Its dark eyes watched the ruin, calm but solemn, as though it alone had expected this ending. The villagers turned their gaze toward the animal, and whispers stirred among them. It knew. It saved us. We live because of it. The words passed from mouth to mouth, reverent as prayer. No one doubted now that the beast had understood something beyond human senses. The groaning of beams, the tremor of failing wood, the hidden language of danger carried in the earth. An elder, her face etched with dust and tears, stepped forward. She bowed her head toward the elephant, hands pressed together, voice low but firm. "We will remember," she said. Others followed, nodding, murmuring thanks into the night. The elephant shifted, lifting its trunk once, as if in acknowledgement, before lowering it gently to the ground. It did not trumpet again. Its warning had been given, its task fulfilled. Now it stood in quiet dignity, a sentinel among ruins, the silent witness to what had almost been tragedy. The survivors began to disperse, leading their families home through streets still hazy with dust. Children glanced back over their shoulders at the great animal under the tamarind tree, their wide eyes filled not with fear, but with awe. Above, the moon sailed calm and silver, shining over a market turned to rubble and a village turned to gratitude. And in the silence, one truth bound them all. They had lived because they had listened, not to timber, nor to signs they had seen too late, but to the voice of the elephant.